Today I finally get hands on with the new Rolex Oyster Perpetual 41mm releases. And honestly, what fascinated me immediately is that these two watches feel like complete opposites. One is restrained, quiet, controlled, almost psychologically invisible until the light hits it properly. The other, loud, brash, reflective, celebratory, a watch that seems to pull attention towards itself from across the room. And yet somehow both still feel unmistakably Rolex. Which is interesting because traditionally the Oyster Perpetual, it has always been the calmest watch in the Rolex catalogue. The safe choice, the restrained choice, the background Rolex. But standing here today with both of these watches on wrist, it honestly felt like Rolex might be quietly changing what the Oyster Perpetual actually is. Because one of these watches rewards patience, the other hijacks your attention almost instantly, and once you see them both properly in motion, you suddenly realise that photographs on the internet really weren't telling the full story about these watches at all. Welcome back to Horological. In recent years, the Rolex Oyster Perpetual, it hasn't really been the hype watch. It doesn't generate the mythology of a Pepsi or a Batman or even a Hulk. It's usually just the Oyster Perpetual quietly existing in the catalogue, often overshadowed by collectors obsessing over whether the Coke bezel is returning or what subdial configuration the next Daytona is going to wear. And honestly, that's always felt slightly strange to me because the Oyster case is arguably the single most important design architecture that Rolex has ever created. This is the case that crossed the English Channel around the neck of Mercedes Gleitzer in 1927. A waterproof watch case that fundamentally reshaped modern wristwatch design forever. And even now, almost every subsequent Rolex product still traces its core DNA back to that single idea, and yet somehow the Oyster Perpetual often remains underappreciated in enthusiast circles. But this year feels different, and honestly it should, because in this centenary year of the Oyster case, Rolex has quietly done something incredibly interesting with the Oyster Perpetual line. Actually two completely different things at polar opposites. In this watch right here, the Rolex Oyster Perpetual 41 reference 134303, it might be the most fascinating of them all because Rolex could have gone full spectacle here. They could have drowned this watch in yellow gold, made it louder, bolder, more aggressive, more obviously celebratory, but instead they showed restraint. Measured restraint, a smooth gold bezel, a gold crown, a two-tone light configuration, if you like, and that deliberate decision to hold the gold off of the Oyster bracelet itself, which does something psychologically very clever in person, because instead of your attention dispersing across the entire watch, the eye gets pulled sharply towards the head of the watch itself. No distractions, no visual noise from the supporting hardware, and honestly it works beautifully. The dial especially, the dial is extraordinary in motion, because straight on it appears as this rich sunbrushed chocolate brown, but tilt the watch slightly into a bleak light and suddenly this slate grey underhue, it begins to emerge underneath the surface, like the watch itself emerging from the water. It constantly shifts character depending on angle and motion, and in another subtle touch, it joins the Rolex Air King as one of the few Rolex watches carrying green Rolex text above the cannon pinion, which quietly ties it back into the broader historical context identity of the brand. And honestly, the more time I spent with this watch on wrist today, the more it started feeling less like a standard catalogue release and more like a future historical marker, because there will only ever be one centenary Oyster Perpetual 100-year Oyster watch, and Rolex clearly understands that. What's equally fascinating is the pricing strategy going on here, because at launch in the UK, this 41mm watch, it retails for £8,050, and in the United States it retails for $9,650, which is obviously still an enormous amount of money for such a simple watch, but considering the position this piece occupies within that Rolex catalogue and the significance attached to the Oyster centenary year itself, Rolex almost certainly could have charged substantially more for this watch without serious resistance from collectors. And yet again, restraint was used. Even availability this quickly already feels unusual. According to my authorised dealer, interest in this watch is effectively off the charts already, to the point where consideration has apparently been given to when it enters the window display and when it quietly disappears from it again, partly because the level of attention surrounding the watch itself is so intense. And if this really does become a 2026 only release, acquiring one at retail, it may require the kind of previous relationship building usually associated with steel Daytona allocations, which honestly tells you everything about how collectors are beginning to perceive this watch, because this isn't loud luxury, it is controlled significance, a watch that does just enough at exactly the right moment in Rolex history. And I genuinely believe that 100 years from now, people will still look back at this release as something very special indeed. And then we have this, the Rolex Oyster Jubilee Dial 41, because if the centenary Oyster Perpetual shows a measured degree of restraint, this feels like the Oyster Perpetual completely unleashed. Now technically we've seen glimpses of this side of Rolex before. The Celebration Dial Oyster Perpetuals already hinted that the brand was willing to loosen the tie slightly, to let the catalogue breathe a little, to acknowledge colour, humour and visual disruption inside a product line historically defined by calm restraint. But this feels different because this doesn't feel like the Oyster Perpetual at the party. This feels like the Oyster Perpetual the morning after that party, the point where the bright lights have dimmed slightly, the colours have started blending together, and everything feels just a little bit disorientated. And honestly, in hand, that sensation becomes even stronger because the technical complexity involved in this dial is extraordinary. An 11-stage screen printing process at the level of resolution and alignment Rolex are attempting here is an absurd manufacturing flex. Absolutely absurd. But what's fascinating is that Rolex haven't used that complexity to create maximum clarity. Quite the opposite. They've almost deliberately over-condensed the visual information to the point where if you squint slightly, the dial starts collapsing into that familiar muddy brown tone that you got as a child mixing too many paints together. Every single colour merging into one undefined messy mass. That strange murky brown requiring a complete reset of the palette before the bright definition could return to the canvas again. And honestly, I think Rolex knows exactly what they're doing here, because technically this exact screen printing technique absolutely could have been cleaner, sharper, more separated, more visually legible, but it isn't. And when a company operating at Rolex's level chooses not to pursue maximum clarity and refinement in a certain direction, that's usually deliberate, because what this dial really feels like is Rolex flexing industrial capability almost arrogantly, almost saying if most manufacturers struggle to perfectly execute 4 or 5 layers of complex dial printing, we will do 11 and people will still queue for it. And honestly, they probably will, which makes this watch polarising for almost the exact opposite reasons of the centenary Oyster Perpetual. That watch succeeds through restraint, this one succeeds through controlled overload. And yet somehow Rolex glides between both modes effortlessly while still maintaining one of the most coherent catalogues in modern watchmaking. UK prices for the 41mm Oyster Perpetual Jubilee dial on launch, with the United States price being $6,750 if you can get one, because right now these are fetching astronomical money in the secondary market. In fact, both the watches are. And when you zoom back out, not only do these individual watches begin making more sense, the entire brand architecture anchored around this remarkable 100-year-old oyster case, it starts making more and more sense, even to people outside the hobby, because lesser brands will look at releases like this with quiet envy, wondering how Rolex continues pulling off these feats of product engineering, social engineering and complete brand engineering simultaneously, while still appearing perfectly calm on the surface. Almost like a swan gliding upstream, elegant, controlled, effortless, while underneath the waterline the legs are moving at absolute full speed against the current of increasingly mediocre modern watches. The legs are going hell for leather, if you like, never breaking the illusion, and remarkably those foundations were laid by Hans Wilsdorf over a century ago. At this point, Rolex aren't building the foundations anymore. They built those decades ago, and now they're building roof gardens on the top of skyscrapers. In watches like these, they're effectively placing the cherries on top. One is the classic red cherry, familiar, restrained, expected, and the other, well, this feels like one of those strange luminous green preserved cherries that almost shouldn't exist, but somehow sticks in your memory long after the cocktail party is over. And with Rolex, you can safely assume that's entirely intentional. With the green, pistachio and candy pink Oyster Perpetual dials, Rolex are proving that they have a strong grip of the middle ground. Now Rolex explore the outer edges of the core design. Rolex proving that two metaphors can exist with the exact same watch on the whim of dial design. Nothing short of a masterclass. Then this incredible revelation, but no one else seems to have noticed yet, is that the Jubilee dial is actually the entire modern Oyster Perpetual colour era compressed into one final abstract, slightly absurd composition. Because if you look closely, the dial doesn't just feel random, it feels like every other major Oyster Perpetual identity colliding together simultaneously. The turquoise energy, the candy pink playfulness, the green, the yellow, the celebration era chaos, all layered into one overloaded surface through an 11-stage screen printing process that almost deliberately destroys visual separation between those colours, and suddenly the watch starts making far more sense, because this may not simply be a fun dial, it is actually Rolex abstracting the entire current and past Oyster Perpetual colour palette into a single symbolic object, which honestly feels exactly like the kind of psychologically calculated move that Rolex would make. And remember, watch collecting isn't logical, but it is horological.